Okay, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to our session on the renovation wave that will last until 1:45. My name is Gaspard Demur. I'm a team leader at the European Commission DG Energy working on the renovation of buildings. It's my great honor to moderate this session today. We will have the opportunity to discuss the renovation wave, its main features, the priority areas for investment in the renovation of buildings, going from public buildings, social housing, private dwellings, to the decarbonisation of heating and cooling. But it is, especially today, the good occasion to discuss about the implementation of the renovation wave at regional and municipal level. Today, we will have the great opportunity to have two very distinguished speakers to frame our discussion. We will have first an intervention by Mr. Rossi, followed by an intervention by Stefan Moser, and just afterwards a Q&A session. Before I present Mr. Rossi and Mr. Moser in details, I would just like to guide you through some key rules for taking the floor. So if we can look at the next slide, please. Next slide, please. So there will be interpretation during this session, simultaneous interpretation from English to Italian. So you find the interpretation function on your toolbar. It's the little globe with interpretation below. So just click on that icon and you will be able to access a direct interpretation. Next slide, please. So just to remind you these rules that you all know by heart, but please keep your microphone muted unless I'll give you the floor. You have two important features that you can access with the buttons at the bottom of your screen. So in the participants window, you can view all the other attendees, and you have, of course, the chat window to ask questions. I will take questions from the chat at the end of the speech of Mr. Rossi and Mr. Moser, and we will start then the Q&A session. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure today to introduce our two distinguished speakers. I will start with Mr. Rossi, Enrico Rossi, who's a member of the Committee of the Region, is the rapporteur of a number of very important opinions from the Committee of the Region. In particular, today, we will speak about the opinion on a renovation wave for Europe, greening our buildings, creating jobs, and improving lives, that he has written in March 2021. Mr. Rossi has ensured a number of key political mandates. He has been elected president of the Tuscany region in 2010. He's been a member of the City Council of Pontedera and then municipal councillor of Segna. So Mr. Rossi has really a unique experience in linking the municipal, the municipal, the regional, and the European level, especially as regards building renovation. Mr. Rossi will take the floor first, but it's also my great pleasure to introduce Stefan Moser. Stefan is my head of unit. He's heading unit B3 in DG Energy. The unit under the leadership of Stefan is in charge of buildings and products. The work of the unit is covering a number of key political initiatives for the moment, including the renovation wave, the energy performance of buildings directive review, but also eco-design and energy labeling of products. In general, Stefan is really heading the work on the sustainability of building and products. I will stop there, and it's really an honor to have both of you today. I will give the floor first to Mr. Rossi to introduce the thematic on the renovation wave. So Mr. Rossi, please, the floor is yours.
Buongiorno a tutti, scusate, sono molto onorato di essere qui con voi a parlare di Renovation Wave, ma prima di tutto permettetemi di dire due parole sul Comitato delle Regioni, per il quale io sono stato relatore proprio su questo importante argomento. Il Comitato delle Regioni è una istituzione europea di carattere consultivo che si occupa di esprimere pareri a partire dal punto di vista delle città e delle regioni in merito alla legislazione europea. Per fare questo il Comitato delle Regioni funziona proprio come una specie di Parlamento, con commissioni, con riunioni plenarie, in cui i membri discutono, emendano e approvano pareri e quindi contribuiscono di fatto alla formazione della legislazione europea. Io sono uno di questi politici locali e regionali che ha avuto l'incarico di esprimere il parere per il Comitato delle Regioni sul tema di Renovation Wave. Noi abbiamo dato fin da subito molta importanza e rilevanza a questo tema perché crediamo che ciò che la Commissione europea ha espresso con grande determinazione sui temi ambientali possa davvero costituire per tutta l'Europa. Muoversi verso la neutralità climatica richiede cambiamenti significativi su tutti i territori e su tutte le scale possibili, dalle città alle regioni, che devono essere necessariamente in prima fila nel contrasto a questi cambiamenti climatici, sia come primi interlocutori politici per i cittadini che come autorità responsabili della gestione dei territori. In questo contesto la gestione del patrimonio edilizio è cruciale per il peso significativo, determinante che le emissioni derivanti dai nostri edifici, dalle nostre abitazioni, rivestono nel quadro complessivo delle emissioni di CO2, ma è rilevante anche per la capillarità delle azioni richieste, per avere immobili che siano più ecosostenibili, con risparmio energetico maggiore e, se permettete, immobili anche più belli dove poter vivere meglio. Quando la Commissione ha lanciato Renovation Wave, noi ci siamo subito messi al lavoro e ci siamo attivati per esprimere il nostro parere. Si tratta evidentemente di un tema complesso perché tocca un bene come la casa, fondamentale per ogni singolo cittadino, su cui, per poter intervenire da parte delle autorità pubbliche, è necessario essere consapevoli che l'interesse collettivo deve armonizzarsi con gli interessi e con la disponibilità dei singoli. Intenere sugli edifici significa smuovere un settore economico importantissimo, amplissimo, e influire anche sulle abitudini e sui comportamenti dei singoli cittadini. D'altra parte non basteranno certo i fondi pubblici, che pure sono importanti, per coprire la totalità degli investimenti necessari, ma bisognerà combinare anche diverse tipologie di fondi ed attivare anche fondi privati per raggiungere gli obiettivi che ci siamo prefissi. La complessità di questo argomento è anche legata al fatto che gli edifici in Europa sono molto legati ai territori, al loro clima, alla loro storia, al tipo e al grado di sviluppo economico-sociale e differenze tra le diverse regioni europee. L'approccio alla riqualificazione edilizia deve quindi necessariamente proporre come indispensabile la flessibilità legata ai suddetti fattori, in modo da rispondere adeguatamente ai diversi territori. Nel documento predisposto dalla Commissione abbiamo ritrovato buona parte di queste problematiche, affrontate con grande consapevolezza, riconoscendo a tutti gli attori, quindi anche alle città, ai comuni e alle regioni, il ruolo che devono svolgere senza cadere nella trappola di facili semplificazioni. Abbiamo trovato e per parte nostra abbiamo sostenuto apertura anche ad un approccio di quartiere che noi giudichiamo fondamentale. Gli edifici sono elementi costitutivi del territorio, della città, e necessariamente gli interventi singoli non possono che collocarsi in una strategia generale di ripensamento e di gestione nuova dello stesso territorio. Ad esempio, sarebbe assurdo se Renovation Wave, anziché puntare alle ristrutturazioni del patrimonio immobiliare esistente, come vuole fare, puntasse invece a nuove costruzioni e quindi ad una cementificazione del territorio ancora verde. Questo sarebbe un errore, perché si finirebbe per sottrarre questo territorio alla decisiva funzione di assorbimento di CO2 che esso può svolgere. Innovation Wave è quindi uno strumento per attuare il Green Deal e deve fungere da stella polare per il pacchetto Fit for 55, il quale pacchetto è fondamentale e noi ci auguriamo che gli obiettivi di Renovation Wave abbiano un ruolo importantissimo nel target più generale di ridurre il gas serra al 55% entro il 2030. Sono ambizioni importanti che devono essere tradotte in leggi coraggiose e iniziative concrete. Se non vogliamo che queste leggi appaiano velleitarie, è essenziale l'accordo con tutti i soggetti e in particolare con coloro che stanno sui territori, che governano e amministrano i territori, come le città e le regioni. Per questo siamo molto contenti dell'approccio di cooperazione rafforzata che il Comitato delle Regioni ha lanciato su questo tema e che la Commissione ha accolto. Ci auguriamo che questo accordo possa costituire una solida base per una cooperazione costruttiva su tutto il pacchetto Fit for 55. Prima di lasciare la parola al mio collega Stefan Moser della DG Energia, che entrerà nel merito di Renovation Wave, lasciatemi portare infine un'ultima considerazione alla vostra attenzione. Sappiamo che molti soldi arriveranno sui territori e che molti di questi andranno, noi ce lo auguriamo, nella filiera dell'edilizia per promuovere la riqualificazione energetica. È un'operazione che riveste un ruolo determinante anche per la ripresa economica, cioè per creare nuova occupazione dopo la crisi causata dalla pandemia. Sappiamo anche che per raggiungere questi obiettivi che ci siamo prefissi non bastano i soldi pubblici, ma ci vorrà una grande collaborazione tra pubblico e privato. Bisognerà rendere accessibile a tutti i fondi disponibili, con piani di formazione, con linee guida, con assistenza e anche con il monitoraggio sull'avanzamento dei lavori. Noi, come Comitato delle Regioni, ci impegneremo con tutta la nostra forza affinché questa strategia abbia successo pieno, contribuendo in Europa ad intraprendere la traiettoria di uno sviluppo sostenibile ambientalmente e socialmente. Vi ringrazio per l'attenzione e porgo la parola a Stefan Moser.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rossi. Thank you very much, Gaspar, and I'm very happy. Good afternoon to all of you to be here with you to discuss, and particularly grateful to the Committee of the Regions for the very close cooperation. The Renovation Wave is quintessentially of regional and local dimension. This is where the key actors are and where basically the Renovation Wave will be made a success together with joint forces, of course with support from the EU, but also from the national level. It is a strategy, as Mr. Rossi has pointed out, which needs to bring together all the people, citizens, with their various aspirations and needs to have a common agenda, to define a common agenda, to work together at municipal level, but also in the districts, in the neighborhoods, in the quartieri, as Mr. Rossi has said, because we cannot solve such a large transformation of the building sector, of the building stock, individually, just isolated people doing that. That requires a strategic approach, and for that, the cities, but also the regions play the major role to bring together the different aspects which citizens care about, and they need to be defined in a way which makes them really acceptable to the large majority at least, so that then basically we can have a shared agenda. The Renovation Wave is a holistic program, really. We have, of course, a number of actions within it, and I'll also go more in detail of the revision of the legislative framework. But it's first and foremost a holistic agenda. It is trying to create multiple benefits, both for the for climate, for energy, for environment, for transport sectors, so from the more functional side. But also then to improve social inclusion, really, to address the worst performing buildings, to improve the building services, which are so important to citizens, both in public buildings, schools, education services, hospitals, health services, social care services, but then, of course, also residential quality of the worst performing buildings, which in many cases stands against social inclusion and basically leaves people behind. This can be and must be addressed. The worst performing buildings are often the worst performing in terms of energy, climate performance, but also comfort, health, safety. In many respects, this is a shared agenda. And we have to address, therefore, also energy poverty more broadly through the buildings agenda, and make sure, of course, that also for middle incomes, affordability will be ensured through the provision of public funds, because there's a very important public goods character. Some of the advantages are really private in nature, so you may be able to recover some of the money needed for renovation through reduced costs for energy, for heating and cooling. But many of the benefits are of a broader societal nature, of a public nature, including inclusion, social inclusion of people, and safety and quality of education and healthcare, for instance. And that justifies significant amounts of money to be provided, not only now with the recovery funds, but this will have to continue for a long time in the future. So this is really important, that there will be continuity of funding, public and private, to be brought together, private funding to be triggered by the public mechanisms which are being put in place. So that is essential. We have to look at the whole agenda, and only then we can ensure this large-scale transformation. We have an objective to double at least the renovation rates in the next 10 years. So from now, about 1% of at least energy-related renovations to more than 2% at least by 2030, but also to deepen the renovations which are taking place. Basically, deepening means use the full potential, looking at all the aspects, not to forget anything, to have a strategic plan when addressing a renovation, not just go for easy and quick solutions. Individual steps, one after the other, are possible and even desirable. But what we need to avoid is actually individual steps which would preclude, which stand in the way of making more far-reaching improvements in the future. So that's why for increasing the depth of renovations, we need a strategic plan to look at all the aspects for individual buildings, but in particular also for neighborhoods, for districts. As Mr. Rossi said, that is crucial for types of buildings which are similar, where we can also then professionalize the advice being given. We can create bigger volumes, which is important for financing, but also for the planning permissions, for the construction permissions. If you do that together, the costs will certainly go down for everyone. And there's also a larger impetus to get it through, basically. It's very difficult for individual people to engage in such a challenging project as a renovation. For that, of course, we always need good advice. We need ideally one-stop shops which provide at least all the information in one go, both, of course, online, but also with advisors, physical advisors, where people can go to learn and to inform themselves right from the start what it requires to go through a deeper renovation. In terms of information for the building, where are the weaknesses, that, of course, how to get that, how to establish that, to make a diagnosis of the building, and then to develop of the type of building, and then to go through the different stages of the renovation. And for that you need advice. And as I said, ideally this would also be professionalized, and that can be done if it's done at a higher level of aggregation, at district level, neighborhood level, quarter level, basically. So that is important. We have several other aspects which go hand in hand with the renovation, which is digitalization, making buildings smarter, smart ready, but also really to ensure smart operation of the buildings. This is not an end in itself. It is certainly a mega trend now taking place throughout society, but is a precondition for active consumers, for active citizens. Only if you have the tools at your hand that you can manage your energy needs, heating needs, cooling needs in the most intelligent manner, then you can actually reduce also energy consumption and also reduce materials in the building operation, and that is a crucial aspect to create also databases and the data that they are not lost linked to a building, because a lot of data are general knowledge. I mean, data is knowledge about a building, but the knowledge is not lost over the lifetime when it comes through different cycles, construction, management of building, renovations of a building, but even transformation of a building, that the data are maintained, that the knowledge is not lost, and then you can actually develop the cheapest and most adequate solutions to improve the building further if needed. We see definitely the construction sector, the renovation sector, as one of our main hopes to get out of the economic crisis. This is one of the sectors which provide the highest return in investment in relation to local jobs being created. So we see the renovation wave also as an opportunity for young people to have very attractive jobs, but also for people who might not be able to go back to their previous jobs, and to have really an employment opportunity for an entire career. So this is a challenge for at least an entire generation until 2050. It is not a short-term challenge which after a few years will be finished. So that's why there will have to be a significant investment in capacity, both physical capacity, but also knowledge, what materials, including nature-based solutions, can be used for buildings to have innovation, of course, also, but then very important and most important probably people, skills, young people getting into this sector with digital skills, with design skills, engineering skills, but also, of course, technical knowledge. We need more people, and this will be a huge training and professional development challenge in that respect. And there we have to give clear signals of hope, basically, that there will be a real opportunity. And we need to use wisely the funds being prepared now for the recovery, but also from the multi-annual financial framework, but also from national state aid. So the money will have to be used in the best possible manner to avoid any waste. But there will have to be large amounts of money, and there are large amounts of money now available. So it's very important to have plans established to absorb these amounts of money, which are wise, to make the money really well spent, and also draw on the best possible practices which are observed throughout Europe or even the world, to finance basically useful activities.
We try to establish a communication line between.
Then, in terms of main challenges, we have, of course, decarbonisation of heating and cooling. That is, the heating and cooling systems are to a large degree still dependent on fossil fuels today. We have to bring in more renewable energy, but also energy efficiency in that respect. Then, as I mentioned, tackling the worst performing buildings, tackling energy poverty as a major political mandate for all of us. This is what we are there for. We want to improve the lives of citizens, and then to see also what can be done with the building services from public and near semi-public buildings, social buildings, administrative buildings, hospitals, because these provide wider benefits to society, and it goes beyond energy and climate, but it also because many of these buildings are from times where they were not optimized in relation to saving energy and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and even many of them are old. Therefore, the services they provide are no longer up to date and can be improved. For all that, we need to now improve significantly our regulatory framework at the EU level and optimize the funding tools, but also ensure a significant funding also for the future, even beyond recovery, and then technical assistance through a one-stop shop being provided to break down the existing barriers throughout the renovation chain, which are many. So there's not the one single solution which would change and speed up renovations so quickly as we need it. So we have to work on a series of different challenges. So it's legislation, it's about better information, legal certainty, and then also the competitiveness of the construction sector to digitalize the construction sector. And as I said, also the skills challenge is very important. As regards the legislation, what we will try to introduce is in a phased manner, mandatory minimum energy performance standards for existing buildings. That means that we will have to take into account, as Mr. Rossi has said, very strongly the local, regional, but also national specific circumstances. There will have to be a kind of, I would say, good balance between an EU level approach, which provides for the direction, but still leaves member states and the local and regional actors significant leeway, significant flexibility in defining what needs to be done with buildings. Then we need better information tools, energy performance certificates. There have to be, the aim is really that the citizens, that the inhabitants, the investors know what actually is the case, what is the diagnosis with a building, to have fully reliable information. And that is absolutely crucial. There we have to bring together also different information sources and establish building renovation passports with the aim of having a strategic plan what to do with a building, because we know and we do not advise that everything is done at the same time. You cannot change a building entirely in one single go. This would make it very difficult for the people to stay inside. The aim is to minimize also the impact, the negative impact of a renovation on the people. But we have to plan renovations very well, so that basically step by step, in a strategic manner, they can be improved and people can still stay inside and building services can be provided during that time. For financing, we need to simplify also the rules for combining different funding streams. And a lot of effort is being done now with the Renovate and Power Up flagships under the recovery plan, recovery facility under Next Generation EU, in cooperation with the member states, with the national plans being drawn up and then providing the basis for financing. And as Mr. Rossi said, private financing is absolutely quintessential. We have to ensure that, because public money will not be enough overall. Mr. Rossi mentioned the need for neighborhood-based approaches. Again, this is, from our point of view, key to success. The districts, where local politicians and regional politicians will play a key role to rally ideas, to understand also what are the needs of citizens, also in terms of transport, connections, accessibility, safety. So to really define the agenda, and then to see how this can be most usefully taken forward in a holistic manner, together with the energy and climate improvements which have to take place. So to really not to forget anything, because it would be unfortunate once you do a full-scale renovation, you cannot really change anymore so much the building. The time to think about is at the beginning, in the strategic plan, when you go about a building or types of buildings or a whole neighborhood, that you develop a concept for the future really here. For the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive revision, maybe just a few highlights also. There will be a package in July with the revisions of the Energy Efficiency Directive and Renewables Directive, but also the Emissions Trading Scheme, which will have all an impact also on buildings. We are trying to align legislation as much as we can that is fully complementary, but there will also be the specific Energy Performance in Buildings Directive to be revised at the end of the year, where the public consultation is still ongoing until next week, until the 22nd of June. We've had a number of workshops with the stakeholders, but also with the member states and regions, and cities have also participated to look at the different aspects. And there indeed, the main topics are increase renovation rate and depth. Most important tools for that are the minimum energy performance standards and also deep renovation standards. What does that mean? How can we make sure that financing is facilitated for deep renovations, that we have a clear concept what that is? Then, as I mentioned, the building renovation passports, to have a strategic document where you develop a vision and then implement that step by step. The comparability and quality of the information has to be ensured through the energy performance certificates, to have also better accessibility for the users through digital means and national databases. And then we have to decarbonize buildings. So we have to develop, in addition to the energy savings and energy efficiency logic, also a zero emission logic. So to develop basically and make sure that new buildings will become net zero emission buildings. So and there, of course, we also have to look at the carbon emissions embodied in the physical structure of the building and needed for constructing the building, to have a life cycle approach here. We will not be ready to transform everything into a greenhouse gas metric. This is a bigger challenge, but we have to start. We have to generate data. We have to generate knowledge, basically. And then we can design policies on that basis. So this is a major opportunity now to move forward. And then we have to accelerate the modernization of buildings, and with digitalization as the key enabler. So that's the issue with the smart readiness and especially smart operation of buildings, but then also the link to electromobility, where we have the big responsibility of making sure that in the future there will be enough recharging stations for vehicles, cars, bikes, scooters. In the public space, that's our cooperation with DG Transport, with our colleagues from DG Transport and Mobility, and in the buildings. So we have partly private buildings, but also semi-public or semi-private buildings like car parks, that we have to have the right interaction between the public space in the streets and the buildings, and access to buildings, private, semi-private, semi-public, depends on the type, but it has to be enough for the people. The people have to be able to rely on recharging points to be available, that they don't have to drive around for a long time and be uncertain whether they can recharge their car. That would be a major obstacle to electromobility being successfully taken up. So if this was the case, so we have with the EPBD the chance and the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive to get it right now, to put in place a sufficient framework for the future. So that is basically what I wanted to mention at this stage with you on that. But I should not forget and should also mention the new Europeanbauhaus, which basically is an initiative by the President of the European Commission to bring in also the dimension of aesthetics, of style, because this is our cultural identity. We have to make sure that style is not forgotten in any way, that it is matched with sustainability and the functional aspects, and that the cultural dimension is fully reflected whatever we do, because we don't want buildings to look everywhere the same, and they have to be adjusted to the local and regional cultural dimension, and the climate zones also, of course. So there are simply different ways of doing things, and that is important. There's now a project done by the Joint Research Center at the European Commission under the leadership of our president, which tries to bring together all the different relevant stakeholders, architects, artists, engineers, scientists, and designers, who to develop really good practices for dissemination, then also, and to have a regional specification of those ideas throughout Europe, to bring together knowledge basically, and to exchange good practices. So this is what, and this will take place throughout the next several years. There will be a communication also later this year, which will outline that more in detail. So with that, I would like to thank you very warmly for being able to be with you, and look forward to any questions and the comments and debate. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Stefan, and many thanks, Mr. Rossi, for your interventions. And they were extremely providing a lot of information. I already see a number of questions in the chat, but maybe I would like to start with one question to you, Mr. Rossi. You finished your presentation by insisting on the role of regional and local authorities for the implementation of the renovation wave, but also of the recovery plans that member states are developing for the moment. Could you please develop your vision on the role of coordination of the regional authorities in the implementation of these recovery plans for boosting the renovation wave on the ground? I think you're still muted, Mr. Rossi.
Grazie. Il punto fondamentale è che in gran parte della legislazione europea il potere di governo del territorio è delegato alle regioni e ai comuni. La domanda che ho letto verte fondamentalmente sul concetto di vulnerabilità. E io penso che bisognerà distinguere due piani: una vulnerabilità dei territori, una debolezza di alcuni territori, mi riferisco alle aree marginali, mi riferisco alle aree di campagna, di montagna, quelle aree che hanno subito anche processi di abbandono della popolazione, che con il concetto di distretto possono diventare anch'esse oggetto di investimenti del Renovation Wave. E quindi di nuovo io vorrei sottolineare l'importanza di questo concetto anche ai fini di una maggiore coesione, necessità di intervenire non solo dove la popolazione è concentrata, ma anche sulle aree dove c'è minore popolazione, le aree di collinari, le aree di montagna, che sono fondamentali anche per il mantenimento dell'equilibrio idrogeologico nelle aree maggiormente di pianura. Il distretto può servire, se viene ben usato di concerto, di coordinamento tra regioni e città, per investire anche in queste aree. E questo mi pare il primo punto fondamentale. Il secondo punto, sempre a proposito della vulnerabilità, è il fatto che, come sappiamo, ci sono in Europa qualcosa come 50 milioni di persone che soffrono di povertà energetica. Sono persone spesso che hanno bassi redditi, sono persone che abitano edifici non efficienti, che soffrono il freddo, che soffrono situazioni di calore, di calura che diventano insostenibili anche a causa dei cambiamenti climatici. Di nuovo, comuni e regioni assolvono alla gestione delle politiche sociali e hanno un'impostazione decisiva nell'attuazione anche delle politiche sociali di lotta alla povertà che hanno i governi nazionali, spesso d'intesa e utilizzando anche fondi della stessa Unione Europea. Quindi se noi vogliamo fare in modo che ci sia un aiuto verso le situazioni di disagio, che la lotta alla povertà non riguardi semplicemente il fornire una generica assistenza monetaria, ma una volontà di intervenire anche sulle stesse condizioni di vita e abitative delle persone che sono maggiormente deprivate, di nuovo le regioni e le città che fanno le politiche sociali contro la povertà devono essere coinvolte per aiutare le persone più bisognose. In ultimo, credo che Mose abbia perfettamente detto il concetto: città e regioni hanno bisogno anche di armonizzare dal punto di vista non solo urbanistico, non solo di governo di territorio, ma anche dal punto di vista architettonico. Qualche risposta alla domanda interessante che mi è stata rivolta.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Rossi, for your answer.
Thank you.
I see that we still have 5 minutes for answering questions that have been put in the chat. Maybe we can group them, and I see for you, Stefan, 2 questions that are going together. One, I mean, and linking very much to Mr. Rossi, as says on energy poverty. The first question is on the existence of specific de-risking mechanism, such as social guarantee fund for vulnerable groups, and the second question also on a building-related load that permit de-risking. So, Stefan, could you elaborate about financial instruments that would be used for fighting energy poverty and de-risking investments for low-income households?
Thank you very much, Gaspar, and again, Mr. Rossi, for the further statement. As regards de-risking financing for fighting against energy poverty, this is indeed crucial. We need to provide the funds. Not all the funds can be public, but a significant number of funds have to be public. And where we have to draw and rely on private financing, this has to be de-risked, so that basically the money will be invested and it will be attractive. So it will of course be a question of the precise conditions and of the calibration. There will be a big role for the member states to channel through funds to the local level, but also for financial institutions to do that at the EU level with the EIB, but also the national promotional banks, which are active in that area, that they design financing schemes. And there will also be, of course, efforts at the EU level to make sure that funds will be specifically dedicated to addressing social challenges. We are certainly aware at the Commission that the social question is the one standing on top of everything else when it comes to renovations. We cannot accept and we cannot afford an outcome where renovations would lead to actually those whom we want to help will be pushed out from the building, or that actually those where we need to concentrate on the worst performing buildings will be the ones left out because no one wants to invest in them. That is the political objective. And then of course on the details, de-risking is one way of doing that, but also the provision of significant funds which are to some extent earmarked and dedicated for addressing social challenges, energy poverty, and addressing the worst performing buildings.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. As we have 2 minutes left, maybe I'll leave you the floor, Stefan and Mr. Rossi, for very short concluding remarks. Maybe taking the question, Stefan, on the importance of citizen in the process of renovation and also of digitalization. So maybe first, Stefan, your concluding remarks, and then very quickly, Mr. Rossi, if you want to have a final say.
Thank you very much for that question. I think Mr. Rossi said also we need to work with the citizens. The citizens have to have indeed the assurance and the guarantee that what will be done with the building will be really to their benefit. It is not a kind of abstract concept only. It is something which will help them, and then they will be convinced that it's actually okay, to some extent acceptable, to go through the pain of a renovation. I mean, we all know there will be noise, there will be dirt, this will not be very nice, but this can be compensated basically by the promise that after that there will be a much better building for all of them. And I think that's why we need to look for this holistic planning. That's basically, there's upfront clarity, what will be the outcome of the renovation in terms of energy savings, greenhouse gas reductions, but also comfort, health, quality, accessibility, safety of the building, that basically there will be a win-win really for the people living inside, then I think it will come. And on digitalization, it's a similar thing. Digitalization increases comfort if it's rightly used. People can, in a more targeted manner, regulate the environment in which they are, and there we have to also see that we don't overshoot, but also that we use the full potential, that also those citizens which are not maybe digitally so knowledgeable can draw benefits and understand why it's good for them. And then people will usually come along. They have an interest, and they will be happy to go through the pain of a renovation, which may be dirt, noise, and all that for a certain time.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Mr. Rossi, maybe your last word before we thank all our participants. Mr. Rossi, you're muted.
Veramente, grazie. Volevo sottolineare e mettere in evidenza un concetto, un problema che è stato espresso bene dal dottor Mose, ed è quello che riguarda la preoccupazione della formazione, la preoccupazione cioè di avere specialisti, costruttori, ingegneri, architetti, geometri che siano adeguatamente formati per progettare case che abbiano queste caratteristiche di benessere, di capacità di risparmio energetico e di ecosostenibilità. Non dovunque in Europa è così, e soprattutto penso anche alla parte meridionale dell'Europa, e forse non solo a quella. Laddove esiste inoltre un sistema di piccole imprese e piccolissime imprese edili, anche queste hanno bisogno di essere sostenute nella loro capacità di intervento, e quindi anch'esse hanno bisogno di formazione. Credo che il successo di questa fondamentale, strategica iniziativa per vivere meglio, abitare meglio e per combattere i cambiamenti climatici in Europa, per raggiungere gli obiettivi che ci siamo dati entro il 2030 di abbattimento delle emissioni di CO2, sia molto legato alla capacità di avere un ceto medio intellettuale preparato e un'impresa preparata ad assumere gli obiettivi che ci siamo dati. Ecco perché noi nel nostro parere, che abbiamo dato come Comitato delle Regioni, abbiamo insistito molto nel decentrare anche gli aspetti della formazione e anche gli aspetti dell'informazione alle stesse imprese su come accedere, su come comportarsi, su come mettere in atto procedure che consentono il raggiungimento degli obiettivi che si è posta l'Europa. Comporterà anche pensare poi al fatto che ogni paese riesca a dotarsi anche di una fornitura adeguata, e quindi, come vedete, i temi si intrecciano molto, non solo con i fondi che emergono da Recovery Fund, tutto il bilancio del settennato dell'Unione Europea, e comportano una convergenza, ecco, di pluralità di iniziative, di piani di intervento per far avere successo a questa strategia fondamentale. La formazione mi sembra che è un tema che abbiamo affrontato, ma non ancora a sufficienza. Grazie.
So thanks a lot, Mr. Rossi. Thanks a lot, Stefan, for these enlightening speeches and intervention. With this, I will close the session by thanking you, but also all participants to have been there. So many. So thanks a lot. I wish you an excellent continuation of the conference, and hope to stay in touch with all of you for a successful implementation of the renovation wave. Many thanks, Mr. Rossi. Many thanks, Stefan, again, and bye to everybody. I will close the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.